Hello humans, welcome to the M Word, brought to you by Martin, that's me,
And Matt.
that's him. Hello Matthew.
Hi, been a while.
It has. Well, we'll dig into that because it actually ties into our guest, Ian. Ian, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure. Provide a bit of context and go back to your discussion. It's been a while, yeah, we've decided to have a bit of a summer break. Part of that was, I suppose, my fault because I was pretty fatigued over the last few months really now. And one of the things that I did during that period was I went on a mindful course or day-long course up at the Children's Centre, and one of the things that was going on up there was what Ian does with Wim, and you've come up in a number of conversations we've had with athletes that we've had on the programme as well, so again I wanted to connect with you, didn't get round to it, and then we were just discussing off air there the small Isle of Man that we live in. I was out with the French Sinead a few weeks ago, heard her on the phone, mentioned the name Kirky, I didn't even know it was your nickname, and I was just like, is that being the Isle of Man, is that an Ian Kirk? Yeah, and I was like, I need to speak to him, and she obviously kindly introduced, so thanks for coming down and having a chat about what you do. We've been having a chat for half an hour off air, so I suspect we've got a lot more to chat about on air.
Yeah. No.
So maybe just to kick things off, were you originally from the island?
I'm originally from Warrington.
Oh, right, okay.
And Earlham and Cadishead, just outside of Manchester, or Salford. I moved to the island when I was 14, and I've been here since.
Right.
And,
I presume your folks came here to work, did they?
Yeah, my mum's a midwife.
Okay.
So she came over to be a midwife in
Yeah,
the hospital at the Jane, and my father, he works as a gardener, a builder,
right. Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades, that's the one. Do much any job really.
And what school was it when you came over?
Ballacomine, so
Okay.
I did 2 years at Balla, and then after that it was Barclays Bank.
Oh, right, okay.
so yeah.
And that just need to find a job type of thing.
Yeah, kind of. Before I moved over to the Isle of Man, I wanted to kind of be a PE teacher or something like that. I wanted to do something to do with sports or the human body and learning physiology and bones and things like that. But then kind of when I got to the Isle of Man, it was more the business sector that kind of was kind of the place to be.
Like most people, isn't it? Yeah, it's end up no matter what in business right over here, isn't it?
Yeah. So I kind of went down that route, and then after 4 years in the bank, I kind of decided that wasn't for me.
Right.
Then went to work in a factory called DLP down at Snugborough Train Estate. We were there for 12 years. It took 12 years to realise that wasn't for me. But yeah, and then I decided to go on this journey. Yeah.
So
learn about health.
What started that journey? Where did that journey start?
Basically,
what was the trigger?
I was sick, basically.
Right.
I was ill, and at the time I was in a relationship. We just bought a house and whatnot, and after 18 months of being in the house, the relationship broke down. My fiance at the time left me, and I was in a pretty bad way with my health. I was constantly having like food poisoning type symptoms and things like that. I had a bowel condition that was really debilitating.
Right. And were you speaking to doctors?
Yeah,
to try
so
and
I was going to the doctors. They actually tested one of my stool samples and realised that I had some bacteria and then these viruses and things like that, or parasites or whatever it was. And they actually sent the environmental health round and things like that.
Okay.
So yeah, to kind of wonder where I got these symptoms from and these parasites and whatnot. So. And
that your not great health, was that then affecting you? So use the word mentally or getting you down and.
Absolutely, in every way of life, from my health to my fitness to my mental health. It was a lot paranoid. I felt like a lost, helpless child that was stuck, somewhere and couldn't get out. And it took a lot for me to kind of change my ways, because I thought I was on a good diet. I was training, I was exercising.
What training were you doing? Like, what did you do?
I was playing for All Boys.
Okay.
Football team. And also at the same time, I was doing some home gym work that I was doing. I was in pretty good shape. But internally, I was kind of dying. Yeah. So much so that I was kind of passing blood, things like that.
Right.
And
at that point, was that kind of your maybe a justification of all your exercising there, and your thought process there is that, well, to be healthier, I need to exercise more, I need to do more,
have a good
even
diet.
All that sort of thing.
That was a good diet.
More health I do, the more obviously my body will become.
Yeah, but then like, that just wasn't the case, and then after going to the doctors and having the old prostate check and getting scheduled to go for the colonoscopy, which is putting the camera up the rear end, I kind of, just before that, had a bit of a tough week in work, because I was obviously I was sick, I was trying to work 60 hours a week in the factory to pay for my mortgage that I was left paying and pay my ex out and things like that, so I was in a massive financial hole, and I just felt, like you said about fatigue and things like that, that's the way I felt. It got to the point where I was that drained, like the people in work were asking me if I was okay, and at one point like all my lymph nodes were really inflamed and things like that, and I actually mentioned to my mum, I was like, I think I'm, have I got cancer or something like that, worst case scenario, but from going to the doctors, they told me, that basically these bowel conditions that I might have, that they don't really, nobody gets over them. You'll be on medication for the rest of your life and things like that. And then it got to the point when I was in the factory, and I was like, I was just in work one day, and I thought, you know what, that's it, I've had enough. And I'm not one of those people who gets something in the mind and doesn't go through it. So for me, I was going to go home that day and kind of end my life. And I got to that stage where I was like, but luckily a friend rang me up not long before I was about to do it.
Right, wow.
And kind of said he'd take me in and look after me for the weekend.
And if you don't mind me asking, before that moment, had you talked to friends or family about the mindset that you would get, not mindset, that you were getting those kind of tendencies to end it?
No. I mean, it wasn't even really, it was just
reach breaking point.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where I wasn't even upset about it. I was just physically done, physically knackered, and I was like, you know what, that's it, I'm going to go home, do it, and it's going to be, I'll write one little letter and that's it, but divine intervention, whatever you want to call it. And
when your mate rang you, did he say, I'm not in a great place, I need a bit of help?
Well, he just asked me how I was doing, and I was literally about to go and get in the car to go home and do it, and he was like, listen, because I didn't want him to, the last time I spoke to him, I didn't want him thinking, oh yeah, I could have done something else or whatnot, but he just managed to ring me out of the blue, said, listen, come to mine for the weekend, me and my girlfriend will look after you, don't worry about food or anything like that, come and stay at mine. And it was actually that weekend when I decided, you know what, there must be a natural way. Instead of going down the medical route, which I've seen over my whole lifetime has not helped certain family members that suffer with mental health disorders and things like that through antidepressants and other things. So for me, it was like, I've seen that system kind of doesn't work, and I don't want to go down that route. So I've decided I was going to go the natural way, and I knew that I had to do something for my mindset. So I just started to, like, the first book I bought was Power of the Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. And I started reading that, and it started talking about meditation and things like that. So I started meditating on my own, even though I thought it was a bit weird. And I'm from obviously the footballing background, have a pint down the pub with your friends, so it was a bit weird for me.
Can I just go back to that? You mentioned about sort of that weekend, and you thought about going down the natural route. Was there something there previously where you felt that was an option? Because I wouldn't say it's a leap, but just from kind of going down a route to suddenly go, I might try that, or was the things, maybe seen a few things already, or
I just started searching. Right. I just started searching for natural remedies for bowel conditions and things like that. So I was doing like cabbage. I was putting cabbage in the freezer and freezing it and making cabbage smoothies and things like that. And it just kind of progressed from there about diet, and then I found out about plant-based diet and the benefits of that. So I decided straight away, even though I didn't know what I was doing or what to eat or what food to prepare, I was like, right, I'm going vegan, basically, at the time. Even though I don't like the label, like we discussed before. So I did that, and I was doing it to kind of heal myself, but like, I wasn't prepared for the amount of ridicule that I'd get in the process, because I had friends.
How dare you look after yourself?
Well, so people didn't know I was sick, because I was always a very closed off person. I'd always kept this stuff to myself, and so nobody really knew that the reason why I was doing it. They just thought I was this weirdo that was changing my diet for the animals and all the rest of it. I had, obviously working in a factory of all men. That I was walking in with different foods, and then they were waving sausages at me and labeling me a weirdo and all kinds of stuff. But that's part of the process. It's one of them.
And that sort of change. How quickly did you do that, or you immediately, right, this is what I'm doing? And then when did you start to feel I'm on a good path here?
Well, immediately I changed. because I believed in it. I looked at the knowledge and was willing to trial and error through experience. I used kind of my body as an experiment, really, so to see what worked and what didn't. And when I first jumped in, I didn't eat properly for a month. I was living off like soy smoothies with cacao and hemp seeds and things like that. So for the first month or so, when learning, and because you have to relearn everything you've learned about diet and nutrition and everything else. So it was very hard at first, you know, but my body was cleansing. It was like, you know, I was going to the bathrooms and basically was flushing the toilet like multiple times in one sitting. And it was like, what the hell is this stuff coming out, you know? And it was literally, I could feel my whole body cleansing.
Right.
But it took around 2 years till I actually really felt like I was healed.
Yeah, right.
You know, because I was in a bad way.
Yeah.
And it took about 2 years, but it was actually when I went after finding out about Dr. Sebi and the alkaline diet, things like that, and I was skint at the time, and I had quite a bit of fruit in, so I was like, right, I'm just going to eat fruit for the week,
right,
until I get paid at the end of the week. So that week then of just having the raw fruit and things like that, and obviously fasting, and completely, it was when I actually felt really good again.
Right,
and it was the first time I ever thought or ever felt this is what it's truly like to feel healthy. You know, I feel that good. You know what I mean? I know we talked about earlier on where you said you changed your diet and straight away you had more energy and things like that. And it was the same with me, because I went from eating 6 small meals a day as somebody who was training in the gym and football and on my feet every day in work, which now I know is not good, because it was constantly in the sympathetic nervous system, which obviously you don't want to be in constantly. So yeah, my body kind of just broke down because of that. And then obviously when I then went into fasting and juices and smoothies and things like that, my body just started to cleanse and just started to feel, I felt like I had more energy.
Right.
I mean, at first it was hard because obviously you go through a detox, your body starts to get rid of some stuff. So the first month was hard, but I did it intermittently with the fasting.
Right.
So I basically went from having my diet at 7 to then having my diet at 8 and then 9, and just pushed it like that. Before I knew it, I was going the whole day with more energy than I had before.
I think that's the key thing there from what I'm listening, is that everyone changes their diet or anything like that and expects instant results. It's to come as soon as you change, you're on a new diet or whatever happens, something like this, and it's not worked after a week, I don't feel any better, I'm going to go back to how I was. And it's good. I think that's important, is that you need to keep at it and build those. And I know we spoke with Johnny, another one is your routines are key, and building up those habits.
Yeah, that's it.
I know. I mean, you mentioned loads of things there that we'll dig into in Sebi, fasting, etc.
Yeah.
I presume then on that, as you go through that journey, or the start of that journey, then you're just adding more and more things, learning more and more things in regard to what you're doing to improve the way you feel, the way your body reacts to food, those types of things.
So that was for me. So straight away, like I said, I was going into having the soy, which went from now, the more I learned, the more I had to kind of let go of that cognitive dissonance and be like, okay, don't just believe what someone's telling me, actually experience it for myself, and then make a decision based on what I've experienced and what I've learned. So,
so I think that's a major point of again, educating yourself around, or personally, it's good, and well, it is. That's the most important thing. Don't read, well, by all means, read other things, but educate yourself, and then not experiment, but learn. Because ultimately, we are different human beings, so we will react differently to things.
Work out what works for you. You know, for me, like I said, when I started finding out about soy being an artificial plant, things like that, and that's how I was mainly having soy at the start, and that's obviously why my healing took a little bit longer. And the more when I got into the Dr. Sebi thing, which I had cognitive dissonance about myself when people mentioned about orange carrots, you know, and saying that they're man-made, and Dr. Sebi was saying it's man-made, it's artificial, and then the more I was like, I don't believe in this guy because he's saying that, and I've been eating carrots and they can't be, but the more I kind of was like looked into it and found out that they were, I was like, okay, well, if I cut that out of my diet, you know, and I just basically broke everything down. Well, what am I putting in my diet that's making me healthy, and what am I not? And what's making me well. So I kind of just broke it down with that and listen to my body. That's the main thing that we don't do is, you know, if you got inflammation or you got fatigue or you've got something, your body's giving you warning signs. Like, listen, you're doing something wrong. You've got to figure out what it is. And that's the kind of way I went from it.
Yeah, and I guess often the modern life is when it's going wrong is to seek answers from elsewhere, which is never a bad thing to go and speak to your doctor, etc. But you're also in control of that situation yourself. So try and find that solution yourself along with doctors or whatever they may be.
Yeah, or just use your own self. Take back control of my own health into my own hands rather than relying on a doctor who just wants to give me a synthetic chemical or So
we'll go on.
I was just going to ask one question, which definitely I've got, is how would you recommend someone start looking into all this? Because there's, in terms of changing health or looking into how you may be able to benefit yourself, because I know you said there you just started researching, and before we started talking you just bought a book. From my own personal experience, when you want to look at something so many different views, opinions, all that sort of stuff out there, it can be quite daunting to be okay, I'll read this one, but I might be missing out on something here that I should start with. It's kind of this where's the starting point. So it's kind of, how would you recommend from your experiences how people could go, start looking into this?
I mean, for me, what would, if I'd have known basically about Dr. Sebi earlier, and I'd known about what he did, because obviously, for the people who haven't heard of Dr. Sebi is was a healer who had been basically curing all kinds of diseases since 1985, which is 35 years now.
And just to clarify there, when we're talking diseases, we're talking cancer, AIDS,
diabetes, sickle cell, lupus, blindness, paralysis, in one case, I think. This guy actually represented him. Well, he advertised it in a magazine or a couple of magazines.
So it was like herbal tablets, for the want of a better expression.
It was a natural diet of fasting, sea moss teas, and all natural herbs, alkaline, electric herbs, because the body is electrical. So what Dr. Sebi would say, the body's electrical, so we need food that complements our human biochemistry. So we need foods that are electrical, so things like your sea mosses, your sarsaparilla, which has the highest iron count of any plant, and just natural plants. But that's a minefield in itself, because some plants, like I said about the orange carrot, are man-made or artificial. So the orange carrot contains starch and sugar, which are both acidic for the human body. Whereas Dr. Sebi would talk about alkalinity and things like that, and also say that he doesn't lend himself to philosophies or theories. Either he knows something or he doesn't know, and then that's the way he'd go about it. And he actually got his healing from a Mexican, when he was sick, and then obviously went down that path of learning himself. And
so he talks about an alkaline diet, that disease can't grow in alkaline, and therefore that should be
creates an environment in the body where disease can't develop. And for me, I've not been sick, for a flu type symptoms or anything like that for 7 years.
Right.
So
since looking into Sebi, you've been practicing. You've been having an alkaline based diet, for a better term.
As much as I can. I mean, I'm no saint. I still like to have a beer now and again, and a drink.
Somewhat of a balance, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's it. It's all about balance. So I like a pizza now and again. Like I said before, so I'm not fully committed, but I do fast for say 20 hours a day, at least.
Right. Okay.
So
you tend to be one meal person.
One big meal a day now compared to 7 before. So I'd say, as a good start for anyone who's trying to go down this path, I'd say, which would cut out a lot of disinformation, would be to start with Dr. Sebi and have an open mind. And also the Wim Hof method.
So in regard to Dr. Sebi, he's obviously, he's got a pretty famous story. Do you want to let the listeners know the story about him and the High Court in New York?
Basically, Dr. Sebi advertised that he was curing all these diseases that nobody else was curing, and so the FDA and the Supreme Court in America tried to prosecute him for practicing medicine without a license, which then they told him to come to the courtroom with, I think it was one person of each ailment that he cured, and he turned up to the courtroom with around 66 to 70 people, and also represented himself and won his court case. Because he had the evidence to back it up. He had 2 doctors' notes to say that the person was sick with the illness, and then 2 doctors' notes to say that they were healed from the illness.
I mean, it's like a movie, really. That story in itself is a movie, which we kind of come on to. They were trying to make a documentary about him.
Yeah.
And the individual in Nipsey that was doing that was shot dead.
Yeah.
Again, there's coincidences going on that are particularly peculiar. Shall we say?
Yeah. I mean, he was healing celebrities like Lisa Left Eye Lopez. He healed her from an eye condition, which is why she used to wear the eye patch. He was helping people like Michael Jackson and other celebrities and things like that. And he was getting quite well known. And his motto was that he didn't want to make money off people who were sick, and needed help. So he wanted to give his herbal compounds and his medicines away for, I think it was £10 a year, he said in an interview, which then if he had 1 million people, that'd make him 10 million a year, which was enough to run the village and carry on the healing village that he had in Honduras, and carry on supplying people with medicines and things like that. So I would certainly recommend when you or looking him up and learning about a little bit about his background, 'cause it's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's all based on an alkaline diet and alkaline electric herbs, because the body is electrical, so therefore we need herbs and foods that complement our biochemistry and give us nutrients, minerals. That's the way you did it, plus fasting and things like sea moss and other herbs, natural herbs.
And we'll look back in a bit, back to kind of fasting and health. Maybe just what brought us here, I think, initially was Wim Hof. So changing gears slightly. Wim, if you look him up, for those that don't know him, WIMHOF, 1F maybe.
Yeah.
You Google him, he's known as the Iceman.
Yeah.
Known for sort of feats in ice-related matters. Which I'll let you explain more about, and then how you got onto that path of what took you to Wim Hof and become a trainer in a long story in a short space of time. So how did that all start? And
well, basically, first of all, Wim Hof is known as the Iceman.
Yeah.
He got that nickname from the challenges and world records that he did. Now Wim Hof is a Dutch gentleman. He's, like I said, he's got 26 world records. He basically climbed Everest in a pair of shorts. He ran a marathon barefoot above the Arctic Circle. He swam under a frozen lake for the longest distance on one breath hold. He was also hung by one finger in the freezing cold temperatures for the longest time.
Is this just him looking for a random cold related challenge and be like, I need to show I can do this or something? Because it's just very crazy what those records you just reeled off there.
Yeah, I mean, so for Wim, it was kind of he found out about the breathing technique that I now teach and that he now is bringing to the world through going into the cold, and he noticed the power of it. He noticed how great he felt, and he did all these world records to kind of get it out there, really. And but he got a lot of ridicule for it. He got a lot of ridicule for the things he was doing, and everyone just thought he was this crazy Dutch guy. But people didn't know the background behind it, and that the reason he was going out and doing these things is because he wanted to make the world healthy. He's a man on a mission, and his own story where he lost his wife through suicide, and she suffered with bipolar, and left with 4 kids to bring up on his own, which he said his children, they saved him, but the cold water healed him. From his issues and things that he had, and they give him the energy to look after 4 kids on his own and deal with the loss of his wife and things like that. So,
where did you personally come to that? Obviously, you've been to Poland. Where did that journey start for you in regard to him particularly?
Oh, so for me, I first found out about Wim Hof in 2007 when he ran the marathon, and it was actually a friend of mine who came in with a laptop. Was like, look at this crazy Dutch guy. He's just running this marathon barefoot above the polar circle. That's impossible, and all the rest of it. So I kind of known about Wim Hof since 2007, and kind of didn't always follow him. But there's certain stages in my life where he kind of just there have always been kind of bad moments in my life when I was in a low point. He kind of just popped up. for some reason.
Yeah.
Now I know kind of why, but it wasn't until 2017 when my friend's father had got sick. And basically I was already on a path of learning about alkaline diet and nutrition and things like that. And because I was working in the shower screen factory, it was my friend's father rang me up and asked me, because he'd just been diagnosed with cancer, lung cancer. He asked me if I could get a wet room for him, or because we make shower screens for the elderly and disabled, Medicare type shower screens. So he knew when he was going through the chemo route that he would need a wet room, so we wouldn't have difficulty getting to the bath and whatnot. So I went around to his house straight after work that day with the magazine for him to pick the screen that he wanted and the wet room that he wanted. And it was then when I started talking about an alkaline diet and fasting, because I just started doing intermittent fasting back then. I'd been doing it around a year. So I was talking him about that, and he was quite open-minded. He was growing his own food and whatnot and things like that. And it was actually him who mentioned to me about the Wim Hof method. It's like, if you heard of this Dutch guy called the Iceman, he's got all these records, and he can actually control his immune system by breathing, which is something I didn't know about Wim. I knew he could do all these crazy things and regulate his body temperature and whatnot, but I didn't know he could control his own immune systems or his own immune system response. So that night, or as I was already looking into health and healing through diet and nutrition, I thought, I went home and I started making my dinner, my one meal of the day at the time, and I went to put YouTube on, and then the first video that popped up was the Joe Rogan podcast. So I was like, okay, well, that's a coincidence. I'll give that a listen. So I gave that a listen, and as I was watching it, I found out that it wasn't just Wim that could control his own immune system, but it was also 12 everyone else that could control their immune system through the Radboud study. So for me, it was like, okay, maybe this is something I should look into, as I'm already looking into health and overall well-being.
And what was that study? Sorry, you mentioned that.
The Radboud study was where Wim was injected with basically the E. coli bacteria, and Wim managed to not get sick. After 16,000 people before him took the injection, and all of them got violently sick for 4 or 5 hours with vomit and diarrhea and sweats and all kinds of things. And Wim managed to get no symptoms whatsoever. He said it felt a little bit of a thing in his head, but nothing. So the doctors turned around and said, "Well, you're this superhuman. You're the Iceman. You're different to everyone else." And Wim was like, "No, I'm definitely not. What I can do, anyone can do." And that was Wim's belief. So Wim went away. He got 12 people that Wim trained, 12 people that Wim didn't train, and all the 12 people that Wim didn't train, they gave him 6 days to train 12 people, and Wim only needed 4. He came back after 4 days with 12 people. They all got injected with the endotoxin, and all 12 of them didn't get sick. And all the other 12 that didn't get trained by Wim all got sick. So it was validation for him, and Wim actually cried when he found out about that, because it was it was a long
validating
30-year journey to seen as this circus act where he goes and does all these mental stunts for people, puts his own life at risk to try and get this information out there, and now it had scientific backing, and now it was proven to.
So that that teaching is 3 pillars.
Yeah.
So maybe talk us through what those are.
Okay, so you got the first pillar, which is the breath work, the breathing technique that was actually an ancient Tibetan breathing technique that Wim learned in cold hard nature. Now this breathing technique
would that have come out of some meditation technique, I assume?
So Wim was already at a young age. He went to India and was doing yoga. He learned yoga from a book, and was teaching some of the yogis moves that they never even couldn't even do. So Wim was already into esoteric knowledge and things like that. Didn't really bother with school, and just went out to India, and he was already teaching yoga. He was teaching mountain climbing and things like that. And that's kind of what he was already doing. And then by going into the cold, that's where he kind of learned the breathing technique that he now teaches. But yeah, it was originally from an ancient Tibetan breathing technique called Tumo, which translates to inner fire, which is the name of Wim's company. So Wim learned that and decided, this is what I'm going to give this to the world. Now, the breathing technique also changes the blood pH from being acidic to alkaline, and there's so many other
How quickly does that happen?
Within a half an hour breathwork session, we can change the blood pH, and that's something we actually show in the workshops physically with pH strips.
Oh, right, okay.
So yeah, and it's very rare that somebody stays the same or goes lower.
And does it stay constantly changed, or do you have to do the breathing every,
Well, that's the third pillar, which is the mindset and commitment. But yeah, I've trained people now who have been keeping up with the method and doing it daily, and who also like a drink and things like that, and when they've come to my workshop in the morning after a heavy night and they've already been practicing the method during the week but had not done the breathing that morning, their blood pH was at neutral rather than.
Is this a hangover cure as well by any chance?
Not that we always advertise that, but yeah, definitely.
Oh, right,
it literally is. It literally can get rid of your hangover.
Right.
So the breathing technique is the first pillar.
Yep.
The second pillar is the gradual cold exposure, so we don't go and throw somebody straight into an ice bath. But if people want to, then we will. They can do that. But we advise to get gradual cold showers so the body adapts. But what you'll find is that the body adapts really fast.
Right. And what's it achieving by throwing people or the cold?
Basically,
in the
it's
body,
training the vascular system. So it's sending the blood to the core, because the core stays 37 degrees, core body temperature. So the hands and feet, the body's intelligent, it knows what to do. So it cuts off the circulation to the hands and feet, because it knows, if I've got to get out of here, or if I'm in a cold environment, what's more important? My feet and my toes and my fingers, or my lungs and my heart and things like that. So that's what the body does. It knows what to do, and then so it switches that off. And not only that, we're training the cardiovascular system to open and close. The lymphatic system, once again, which doesn't run off like the heart and things like that. It's run off the contractions. So you're talking blood flow, blood pressure, things like that, and flushing toxins out easier and just a whole complete workout for the vascular system. But it's also the mindset going into the
pillar
cold.
3.
Yeah, which is pillar 3. But I mean, going into the cold is the cold stress. Nobody wants to go into a cold environment. So learning how to deal with the fear of the cold and going past that and going into the cold, and learning how to regulate your breathing in that environment and allowing your body to adapt is an amazing thing. It's real deep. For me, I find peace in the cold now, whereas before I hated it.
Right.
So for me, that was
and that mindset point, that's just, is that a rewiring of the brain ultimately?
Yeah, because you already have that that fear, that doubt, that little voice in your head that tells you don't do it, or you don't do this and don't do that, or you're not good enough, or you can't do this, you can't do that. And I think the more you go into the cold, the more you kind of subdue that little ego mind that tells you, you can't do this and you shouldn't do that, and it hates the cold, and and if the more you kind of just let go, which is what the cold is about. It's about surrender and just letting go to the elements and going in it, and dealing with the breath and allowing the body to adapt. And the more you go in, the more your body adapts faster, and it just becomes nice. It becomes quite addictive. So that's the second pillar.
And then the third pillar being the mindset.
Yeah, the third pillar, which is like the cornerstone one, which is the one that I try and instill in a lot of people, is the commitment and the mindset to do it and have that courage to do it, and the commitment to carry on doing it. The habit, creating that habit of doing it, because it was, like I said, if Wim can get injected with a E. coli bacteria and get no symptoms, this is gonna keep you well, and it's life changing. I've seen it on so many occasions now, change so many people's lives, people who've been depressed, suicidal, things like that. It's literally changed their life. I've seen it many times in Poland, and then also in Spain when I was there, and it's hard to put into words.
So I suppose in regard to that comment about life changing and your journey in that, you become aware of it. Where was the trigger to I need to go to Poland and start on the course?
Well, it was actually so Big Steve, my friend's father. He never got back to me about the shower screen. So I was like, okay, I've not heard anything back, and I just bumped into his stepson walking the dog down the road, and it was then I said, oh listen, I've not heard back from Big Steve about the wet room that he wanted.
Is Steve 4'6" by any chance? Or is he 6'2"?
I don't know. His son's called Steve as well.
Oh, right. So that's just the distinguish between them.
It's funny because I'm Ian and my father's Ian, so
right.
I'm little.
Which one's big?
I used to be
Ian.
little Ian. No,
Right.
I'm a bit taller than my dad now, so I think. Sorry, Dad.
Big Ian.
So I'm now technically Big Ian, but he'll always be Big Ian. So Steve. So I bumped into his stepson going down the road, and he informed me that the cancer had spread from his lungs to his brain, and he was over in Liverpool, which is why I'd not heard back from him. So for me, that was quite traumatizing in a way. And I was like, okay, well, he's told me about Wim Hof, and I've got to go and find out if it works then to try and help him. And the more I delved down the whole healing process and making myself feel well, the more I noticed everyone else around me was sick. So I went home that day and I looked up the expedition in Poland, which was a week-long expedition, and it was like £2,000. But I had a lot of stuff going on in my own life at the time that kind of, I wanted to go to Honduras and learn about herbs. That was my main priority, because I was trying to tell a lot of people about that and they didn't want to listen. So I was like, well, I'm going to go out there then. I'm going to go to Honduras, which is the murder capital of the world, and go out there and be like, this is what I need to learn. But obviously circumstances changed, and what happened with Steve, and at the time I had a family member who tried to commit suicide twice in 8 days, and then also we had other issues going on. A couple of friends of mine in the factory, they just lost a father from cancer, and it was a very short battle. It was like 3 months, I think, before he got diagnosed and ended up losing his life. So for me, I decided, right, okay, I want to go to Poland. But when I went to book the trip, it was fully booked. So I was like, all right, I'll email the team in a fire, and it was actually Wim's son Michael who came back to me and was like, yeah, we've got 6 people in the waiting list before you for a cancellation. If if it happens, we'll let you know. So then, obviously, things happened, and it was literally 2 weeks before the expedition, and my family member tried to commit suicide twice in 8 days, and I had everything else going on with my friends and dealing with the loss of the father in the factory. And that day my mum was not in the right mindset to go up and see my sister, so I went up and seen her, and she was sat there with a smile on her face and things like that. So for me, it was quite, my emotions were kind of up and down, because I was kind of angry but happy that she was still alive and things like that. So it was like, okay, I rang in work and said, listen, I'm not going back to work today. The first time I went up and seen her, I went back to work, carried on my day, but this time I was like, I can't come back today, I just need to go home. And I actually started doing the Wim Hof method already. For some reason, I always kind of believed I would end up in Poland. So when the expedition was fully booked, I started doing the 10-week course. So for me, I went home, said, right, I'm going to go do some breathing and kind of unwind. And as I was at the end of the breathing, I was in kind of a meditative state. And I got an email through, and as I got the email through, it was Wim's son saying, listen, there's been a cancellation, do you still want to come to Poland? And with the week and the months that I'd had, it was like, okay, I'm going, that nothing's going to stop me. So still thinking about money in my head, I ran downstairs excited about potentially going to Poland. And then I got to the bottom of the stairs, and the gas bill was there, the dreaded gas bill. So I was like, oh, that's the last thing I need. So I basically opened up the gas bill, and I'd have been overpaying my gas for the year. So it was like, okay, so I'm getting it turned out I was getting a £350 rebate. So I went down to my mum's to use their computer to book the flights, and when I went to book the flights were the same price as the rebate. So I was like, okay, this is where I'm meant to be going. Now this was on the Friday, and then on the Saturday I had my friend who passed away, Billy Muckton. We had his annual darts night on the Saturday, and because my emotions were all over the place because what was going on, I got extra drunk that night and kind of slept in on the Monday, and I'd usually be one of the first in the factory at like 6:30 in the morning, first aid training and things like that. But luckily for me, on the way in, I slept in that morning, because when I was on the way into work, I got a phone call saying that one of the storemen had hung himself in the factory. So when I got to work, there was actually an ambulance there, which was obviously devastating as well. So when I actually got to the factory, it's the first time, the business, they got counsellor in. It's the first time I ever spoke to a counsellor, and I wasn't going to go and speak to one, but a few people in the factory said, no, just go and give it a go. So I was right, okay. So when I finally got in to speak with her, and I basically told her everything I had going on, she couldn't believe how well I was actually doing and coping with everything. And
that's what jumps out at me listening with these kind of surrounded by trauma, whatever the right word is,
and suicide and all the rest of it. But you know, that was the first time I kind of was able to speak to somebody. And obviously I had the trip to Poland booked, but I didn't actually have any holidays left for work, so sorry DLP. But so yeah, I spoke with the counsellor and I told her about the trip, and I told her, you know, like, you're not allowed to say anything to anyone, are you? She's like, no. So I told her about it, and she thought it was as crazy as my best friend and my mum and dad, because they were the only ones that could tell, because I did actually take the time off work to get to Poland sick.
Yeah, right.
So I took sick leave, which work really didn't mind with everything that was kind of going on and whatnot. So for me, that was
out there.
That's what pushed me to Poland.
And,
was that nerves, excitement, bit of both?
A bit of everything, and I was going there to kind of to help others. You know, I was going there to see if this could work for my friend's father, and take it back, and some family members that I knew were struggling that it might help with. And yeah, when I got to Poland, I realised it was actually me that needed the healing, and it was me that needed that experience.
Why'd you say that?
Because I was always quite a closed off person. I was always kind of reserved and quite quiet and things like that. And when I went to Poland, it would kind of help me open up and let go of some of the stuff that I had. And not only that, is kind of, I found a real peace in the cold. You know, I said the first time I went to the cold, my toes were in that much agony in Poland. It was like, oh God,
what's that peace?
What have I let myself in for? Well, the peace is just still in.
From no, sorry, I mean in your personal sense of peace from what for you?
Oh, see, for me, I was the manager in a department in a factory. I had like 10 to 12 lads working underneath me, and that was a stressful environment. Everything I had going on.
All
my
this
family and all the other stuff, and my friends' fathers and things like that. And
so is that peace for you in that scenario, not acceptance, but trying to explain how that peace then?
It's like a letting go, like a surrender. For me, I've kind of lost my fear of death, and that was never more evident kind of on the mountain in Poland. It was kind of, I was just completely at peace. There was no thoughts, you know. I mean, they talk about deep meditation and things like that, and I think that's what Wim's kind of created, is like a shortcut to a deep meditative state. So when I was up on the mountain, and we actually was caught in a snowstorm, I felt great. You know, for me it was. So I know some people might have been struggling, but you know, I felt really good, and it was just finally, you know, peace of mind, and that's what I kind of get from the cold now, is the silence, isn't it, of the mind, and that little break for a minute.
And they teach you, obviously, through that week, those 3 pillars you talked about there. Yeah. And obviously, Wim's around constantly. How did you know, were you in awe of him, or, you know, and did you get to ultimately spend time with him?
Well, when we got there, I didn't even know, because obviously I was going last minute, and, you know, I didn't even know what it was going to be about. I didn't even know if Wim was going to be there. So for me, when he turned up on the first night, there was a group of 60 people. And 40 people were staying in the hotel, and 20 people got picked to stay in Wim's house from the Vice documentary. And for some reason, when I was sat there again, I thought, I'm going to be one of those 20 that gets picked in the house. For some reason, I don't know why, and I was. And I was so grateful for that, because there was a group of 20 of us that got to stay in the house, and then we got a real good bond between us. But as far as me and Wim concerned, because there was that many people there, you know, you don't really get that much of an opportunity to spend real time with Wim. So yeah, after the day before the mountain, as Wim came in, and he basically was like, right guys, we're in the hotel, and he's like, take your clothes off, we're going outside, we're going to do some snoga in the snow. So we all
snow yoga.
Snow yoga. So
2 and 2 together.
So we did that. We did a few yoga moves out in the snow and whatnot, and then he sat us all down in a circle, and he basically gives an inspirational speech saying, right guys, there's a snowstorm coming in, you're gonna be going up the mountain tomorrow. And yeah, you're all ready for it. I've got great belief in you, and he just instills this belief in you. You know, he's got more energy than anyone I've ever met at 60 years old. And yeah, it was just amazing. So the next day, you know, that night after we had that speech, we sat down at the table, and my friend Emma Estrella, she's one of the instructors. She's just training to be an instructor at the time, and she just out of 60 people just came over and sat down in front of me, and it's the first, just started asking me questions. And it's the first time that I kind of ever opened up to someone about all the stuff that I had going back home. Obviously, I didn't even mention some of the stuff I taught with Emma to the counsellor, you know. And then that kind of really let me let go of some stuff.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
on the mountain is when I found real
Right.
peace. And even though we had to turn around because we got caught in a snowstorm, we
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
take shelter in like an abandoned ski lift building, and put our clothes back on and head down. But it was after that night then, when we were sat in the sauna, I kind of, no, so actually that night we came back down, and we were kind of celebrating in the hotel. And it's the first time I had a drink since I was there, you know, because I was like, no, I'm not having a drink while I'm here. There was a bar there, and some people were in it during the night of the week. But then I thought, you know what, I've just done the mountain and everything. I'm going to have a drink. So I had finished my food early, and I started having a few red wines. And Wim was across the other side of the room playing his Crazy Monkey song. I don't know if you heard it, but he was playing the song. And for me, I was like, you know what, I need to... I want to hear what he's saying in the song. I want to hear the lyrics, because in my darkest times, and I'm not a great guitar player, but you know, in some of my darkest times, I played my guitar, and yeah, I'd just say whatever was on my mind to let it off my chest. That'd be my way of getting things off. So I went up to Wim to find out what he was playing in his song, and I sat next to him and asked him, and he started playing his Crazy Monkey song in my ear, singing the lyrics, and at the end of it, he was like, music's like meditation, man. It connects with the soul. I was like, okay, yeah. I said, that's kind of why I like to play it. I can drift off into my own place. And he looked at me and he's like, you play? I was like, no, you know, no confidence or anything like that. I was like, I can't play. And Wim just gives me this guitar and he's like, yeah, play, man. So I was like, right, okay, well, what am I going to play? So the only thing I could think about playing was one of my own songs that I'd only played to my best friend in my kitchen. You know, I made up about stuff I had going on. So I played the song, and then Wim was sat there, and he kind of liked it. And then I was like, right, I was getting a dry mouth then, because we kind of passing the guitar back and forth, and I was just making up stuff. He was making up stuff, and I was like, Wim, do you want another drink? I'll go and get you a drink. He's like, no, you stay there. You know, you can have half of my pint. So I was just there sharing a pint with Wim, and I was playing the guitar with my eyes closed, because that's what I tend to do. And then before I knew it, there was like a group of people sat around, kind of all listening. It turned into a bit of a party. So that night, once that night finished, I walked back up to Wim's house from the hotel with some of the lads who were staying there, and I even actually kept the pint glass, and I was quite sad, but came back with a pint glass that I was sharing with Wim to the house, and the lads were then putting like a few drinks and whatnot in it for me, a few shots and stuff that we were having. We had a bit of a party that night to celebrate. And then the next day we were going to do the waterfall, the one that I think I might have mentioned it earlier on.
Yeah.
I got in, and it was the coldest water I've ever been in my life, and we were doing the jump. It's like a 10-foot jump into this little area in the waterfall, and it was like pointing at it saying, right, you've got to jump in there. So, you know, out of a group of 60, we kind of got warm beforehand. Like, listen, half the people who did this in the last expedition, some of them got injured, so it's up to you whether you want to do it or not. But I thought, you know, I'm coming all this way. I'm climbing this mountain in my shorts.
Yeah.
You know, I'm definitely doing the waterfall. You know, I don't care. But then as I was walking up, that's when Wim kind of spotted me, and he was like, Ian, had a great night with you last night, man. I'm going to take your phone number and your email address. I'm going to be in contact with you. I was like, right, okay. Maybe he's just saying that, you know. It's probably something he says to everyone. So we went up, we did the waterfall, we jumped in. And then that night when we got back to the house to kind of, you know, go and get ready for the meal, or the last meal of the expedition of the week, it's when a couple of the lads, we were sat in the sauna, and then a couple of lads kind of was asking me about what had been going on and what brought me to the Wim Hof method and whatnot, and I kind of broke down in the sauna. It was the first time I opened up to any strangers about what was going on apart from Emma. And I mentioned that I was there in Poland in secret, that nobody really knew about, that I was here, and basically that I had a book with me that I wanted to get signed for Big Steve. And I told them, you know, would you think I should bother Wim and asking him? And they're like, yeah, definitely. And if I wouldn't have mentioned it to them in the sauna, I probably wouldn't have had the courage to go up and speak with Wim to get him to sign the book and whatnot. But as we were at the meal that night in the hotel, one of them was like, now's a great opportunity, go up and speak to Wim and ask him. And as I did, I went up and said, Wim, would you mind signing this book? And Wim, being the man he is, was like, I'd be not annoyed, but I'd be upset if you didn't ask me to, type of thing. So I was like, okay. So we wrote this big note to Big Steve in the book, and that was when he was like, right, here's my phone, put your email address in it and your phone number, and I'm going to be in contact, type of thing. So I was like, okay. So that's what I did, and it was never my intention to be an instructor, to teach this. It was that night when I sat there, I said to Wim, you mentioned about training others with the method, and I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't have any confidence, and I, that fear, that doubt, and even after that week, I didn't think I'd have the ability to stand up in front of people and talk or anything like that. So I thought I'd be no good at teaching the Wim Hof method. But after speaking with Wim, and he was like, no, I think you should try and teach other people this. So I was like, okay. So after that life-changing week in Poland, I came back and was back into the factory and back doing my job and whatnot, which was a bit of a...
They know that's where you've been for the week.
Yeah, a bit back
I've seen
to
you in
reality.
town or anything.
I kind of told a couple of people, you know what I mean? I was obviously, it was so life-changing. And then, so I then came back and I had in my head, okay, I already wanted to go to Honduras to Dr. Sebi's healing village. And then basically that's when I decided, okay, I wanted to go traveling anyway, and Honduras was part of those my path. But then it was like, okay, well, I'm going to start on the path of the Wim Hof method. So I basically worked for 3 months. I went away for Christmas at first, which was a nice break because I had 3 days in. That's why I had no holidays left, because it was already going away. So I went off to America for 3 weeks to see a family member, which was amazing. It's just what I needed after that experience. I then applied for the Wim Hof Academy, which I got accepted to. And then basically after 3 months, I think it was in March, I left then to go travelling. And the first stop was Spain at my uncle's, and then after that it was to the Netherlands in Stroe to do my instructor training, where I met with Wim again. But because obviously I was speaking to Wim and I had nowhere to go, I was travelling, and it worked out a hell of a lot cheaper to travel like 3 days earlier to the Netherlands. Wim was like, oh yeah, just come and stay at my place, and and stay here with me and whatnot. So I was like, right, okay. So that's what I did. I stayed there for, it should have been 2 days, I should have been there, but it ended up being a week. And I've done a lot of gardening as a youngster with my dad, and Wim was just, oh, do you mind helping out around the grounds? So I just made the grounds really lovely for the rest of the instructors that were coming. And I didn't realise there was there was 2 lots of instructor training. There was 50 people for 2 days, and then another 50 people for 2 days. So Wim was like, you made the grounds look really great. You can stay for the whole week.
All right.
So I was like, okay, getting there, type of thing. So I thought, wow, this is amazing. I'm away from home. I've left a lot behind, and then now Wim's kind of taking me in, which is testament to the guy he is. And so I was showing some of the instructors around the facility and the place and where everything was. I was tidying up the grounds and filling the ice baths and the hot tubs and things like that. And you're just kind of working there basically. So I got to spend quite a bit of time with Wim.
Sure,
it was actually my 33rd birthday when I was leaving on the Monday, and Wim gave us a lift to the train station and whatnot. And then after that I went to the summer expedition, which they run in Spain up in the Pyrenees. So I spent another week there doing that, and that's where I was already studying to be an instructor. But I was looking at it from an outside perspective. I was seeing these new people come to the method, and I was seeing how life-changing it was over 3 days. Like from the start of when I seen them arrive to when I seen them finish, they were completely different people. It was amazing to see.
And was the thought process then to come back and teach? What was?
Yeah, so I'd already done my instructor training in the Netherlands, so I'd already started that, and I had to kind of do all my studying and whatnot and finalise it in Poland again for the second time, in Poland in the December. But before that, I actually headed off to Honduras, and against all the wishes of kind of my family members. I had my mum crying in the car, so she knew it was a dangerous place, trying for me not to go. But I just knew I had to go, no matter what. I had to go there and I had to learn and I had to find the village. I didn't even know where the village was. You know, I just knew a name of a close place that was in the vicinity, and I thought, well, I'm going to go to a hotel near there and rock up there and then try and get to the village.
And do many people go to the village? Is it kind of a bit of a mecca for people going?
There's a few people from different places. The one person from Manchester that I met there, there was there's a few people. I think it's the final straw for people. I think when they finally tried everything else, they kind of go to the village and hope that this is going to help them. So, I think I was the first and only person from the Isle of Man to go there. But I ended up spending a week at the village. I ended up taking all the herbs, the herbal compounds, and I was doing a bit of fasting at the time. And they have the thermal waters that you go in. It's volcanic waters that has a pH of 9.8 on the alkaline side, which is amazing for healing. They also have natural saunas and stuff there, and all kinds of amazing things.
So have they got? Is it kind of structured for, let's call them outsiders coming in? So I don't know. I presume you don't pay to go there. You just rock up to the village and go.
Well, I did. I mean, a lot of other people come and they book in and whatnot, whereas I just turn up thinking hopefully they'll have room for me, which they actually didn't. So I had to stay in a hotel down the road, which was like a little 5-10 minute ride down the road on a little tuk-tuk. I got picked up every morning, but it was quite an intimidating place, and before I went there I was actually told to leave my guitar behind. In Poland, the first trip to Poland, a guy, after I played that night with Wim and I told him what my plan was to go travelling and go to this healing village, he actually gave me a guitar. Guy there was just like, I'm not going to take it home with me, you keep it, I want you to take it travelling with you. So that's what I did. So it was very important for me to take this guitar, but a friend of mine who was dropping me off the airport basically said, listen, leave the guitar because you'll be marked as soon as you get off the plane. So I was like, okay, and I was grateful for that at first because it was quite intimidating. I was the only kind of bright blonde hair at the time. It was kind of past my ears, and and because of my skin colour, it was the first time I ever felt that kind of.
Yeah, you can maybe feel vulnerable, maybe, or
or it was. It was just different, I was standing out, and things like that. And not that I've seen any violence or anything like that. It was just, quite intimidating, And me, I've had a black friend of mine who's since the age of 16 and through my whole life, really, we've grown up in the UK. So, and I always seen him go on nights out, people would be staring at him and he'd kind of get a bit dinged about it, not annoyed, but, irritating him. And it's the first time I ever felt the opposite end of that scale, so I kind of looked at it like that. I was like, okay, I can kind of see where it's coming from now. As being a standout. But when I got to the village, everyone was so welcoming. I was meeting I met a 72-year-old woman called Gwendolyn and a lady called Pat who kind of looks after Dr. Sebi's legacy and makes sure that nobody comes in to do anything they shouldn't be and whatnot, and really takes care of the village. And Gwendolyn, she'd done a 42-day fast, and Pat before they did a 42-day fast, using all the herbs and the medicines and things like that. And it was a great place to be. So and experience that.
So I want to loop back maybe in a little bit back to then bringing certainly Wim Hof and what you do now and the work there. And touch on. I went to the mindfulness, as I said at the start. But perhaps just cover a load of other subjects before that, and then we'll loop back to what you're doing now. So let's chat about fasting first. So that's comes in many formats, from daily fasts for a period of hours to lengthy fasts. Your experience of how that benefits you and can benefit others. What's your thoughts on it?
I'm a great believer in fasting. It's something I've been doing now, I think, since 2015 or 16. And I started off at first, because I used to, when I was training and things like that, I was in pretty good shape. My diet was pretty good, but my body had kind of given up. So for me, I started with the fasting, whereas I used to eat 6 little meals a day. As now, now I eat 1 meal a day. And I started off by pushing my breakfast from 7 o'clock in the morning to then 8 to then 9 and whatnot. And the first 2 weeks were really, really tough, because your body's going on kind of a cleansing journey. And what happens is, you might have aches and pains and things like that, where some of the toxins are kind of finally getting out of the body. So sometimes with a healing journey, you might get sick before you get better. So for me, that was kind of what was happening. But then, after like a month, it was like I've had so much more energy.
Yeah, right.
My body was feeling a lot more cleansed. It was just, and everything behind the research of fasting made sense to me. It just made sense. Like when we go to sleep at night, our body starts to create human growth hormone, or HGH. So then when we abstain from eating in the morning, that human growth hormone carries on to throughout the day, so the body's healing itself. And as soon as we go into eating food, basically our body's then going into digesting food, which takes up energy. And kind of stops the human growth hormone and goes into digestion and things like that. So for me, it's like, okay, well, as I'm using my body as my own experiment, let's be willing to try it first and then decide whether it works for me or whether it doesn't. So.
It goes back to, it's an early conversation, can't quite remember now, it was on air or off, where the body's the body in itself, without our mind, the body knows what it's doing. The body knows how to, you get a cut on your finger, it knows how to heal itself. It knows what it's doing. So why isn't that why don't we have that general mentality of our body overriding is far more intelligent than we are? Let it do its thing.
We should listen to the body. What the body does is heal itself. And what's the first thing we get taught? When we get sick as a youngster, it's like you don't want to eat. What's the you're like oh I don't feel like eating, and then what's your parents are like, oh, you need to eat, you need to keep your strength up. Here's your soup, and here's this. You need to keep your strength up. When if you just listen to your body, and your body's going, no, don't need to eat right now. I don't need to be digesting food when I'm trying to deal with whatever I've got else going on. It's trying to heal itself. So if we start throwing food in there, you're delaying the healing process of the body. So you're actually going against what your body says, but listening to your parents or whoever kind of knows better. It's
that inflammation, isn't it? Your body's, like you say, using it when you feed it. It's using energy and getting inflamed to process that. And I've never gone as far as the 1 meal a day, but I certainly noticed that doing fasts of 16 hours, which in reality is no time at all, really. And we were kind of laughing before we came on air about the word breakfast and where it actually comes from, which is breaking the fast, which is long lost to, you think breakfast, most people's brain goes, 8 o'clock in the morning, that's what breakfast is, but it's not. What the word stands for is breaking a fast.
So break fast. So and they'll tell you a half truth that the breakfast is the most important meal of the day, which is that's true. But you don't have to have your break fast. You don't break your fast. You don't have to do it first thing in the morning. You can do it later on in the day, or and then when you break your fast, they say it's the most important meal of the day. Well, it is, because you should be having something that your body can digest quite easily. So like water-based fruits like melons and things like that have a high water content. Pears, fruits with seeds, because fruits without seeds have been genetically modified or tampered with by man, just like the orange carrot, which we talked about. And so when I first started learning about Dr. Sebi and healing and fasting and things like that, I had to kind of have that cognitive dissonance that told me, this is crazy, you can't believe that. But the more I kind of looked into it, it's like, okay, this guy's right. The fact that he proved it in a court of law, which is another great thing about the Wim Hof method and the connection between Dr. Sebi, is he used natural alkaline herbs, which creates an alkaline environment in the body, whereas Wim Hof method is changing the blood pH from being acidic to alkaline via breathwork. So they both kind of tie in really well, and I think when you combine the both, you're going to get a really good healing.
Generally day to day, when what is your general fasting rule?
I don't really have a rule.
Do you know?
I don't set any rules. So sometimes I'll have breakfast, so like, well, obviously, but sometimes I'll have breakfast in the morning. Sometimes if a friend offers me breakfast or whatnot, and so I'll have breakfast with them, but then I won't really eat much after that.
Right.
But I tend to do roughly around 20 hours a day.
Right.
Now, and my body's kind of stabilized. It's no natural weight. I don't really get any bigger because I've not really been training at the minute. But I don't get too skinny or anything like that. And when I was in Spain, when I started my traveling journey, that's the first place I went to, I actually wanted to try out doing a longer period of fasting. So I actually set my mindset with doing 12 days. So that's
just
what I did.
water for 12 days.
Just water for 12 days. Well, I actually was using lime juice, so I was getting real limes, squeezing them fresh, and just putting some limes in with some root ginger, and just soaking that in some water, and just having that in Spain. That's.
And 12 days was.
12 days, yeah. So
as you know, again, if you don't know much about fasting or any of that, you just let someone who hasn't eaten for 12 days, you expect to be on your knees, crawling across the floor, or in a dark room crying.
Yeah.
Pretty much what I was going to be asking.
Yeah. So on the first day, I was actually, because I was staying at my uncle's apartment, I started doing all his gardening for him on the first day. The second day, I actually climbed a mountain in Mijas, which I started climbing the mountain, and I thought, it's not too bad, and I thought there was a mountain behind. So when I got to one ridge, I was like, okay, and then I got to the next ridge, and I was like, okay, so I think I'm on the mountain that I thought was behind. So like it took me like 2.5 hours or 3 hours nearly to climb to the top of this mountain, and then a long slog on the way back down. But I felt great, After the second day. On the third day, I was out doing the gardening again and cleaning up my uncle's place. And my mum, being trained in the medical industry, she was kind of sending me text messages about orthorexia and eating disorders and things like that, where I was trying to explain to her, no, I'm doing this for health and to see how my body adapts and whatnot. And to prove a point, I actually went down on, I think it was the 8th day, and did like 50 push-ups, non-stop, just 50 push-ups straight off. And that kind of made her understand the thing a little bit. It kind of shocked her, but I felt strong, I felt light, I felt strong, I felt good.
And that was throughout the whole time. Your energy level's fine. Nothing, no kind of craving and a sense for
not
food. Food. I know, like even if I don't fast, admittedly, so if I'm not eating for, let's say, 8 hours, suddenly your mind starts going, oh, you've not had a bit of food here. You're a bit hungry.
Yeah.
That's me for less than a day.
Yeah.
Day, let's say 3 for you.
Yeah.
Is your body not just suddenly like?
See,
is that not? I don't know, the mindset, I guess, and
it was the mindset, the fact that I said I was going to do it, and before I even quit my job and was going traveling, I'd already done like a 3-day fast and a 5-day fast, and so I'd already kind of cleansed my body, so I was kind of, it wasn't going through that healing crisis like you can do when you first start fasting. So I kind of already been messing around with it for a while, so I was kind of prepared for it.
Yeah.
But
one of the things I noticed, I think, when I started doing a bit more fasting regularly, was that you mentioned there, Matt, about your mind thinks you're hungry.
Yeah.
When if you actually kind of focus on your belly, and is my belly screaming, you got that belly hunger, and the reality is you don't, you never really get it. It's the mind thinks you, because it's a habit that you eat at this time, eat at this time, eat at this time.
It's the habit. That's the
just
hardest
breaking
part.
that habit.
Yeah.
Like anything, smoking, anything. It's just breaking that habit.
It's the habit of eating, like what I found was when I first started doing it, I mean, first of all, like most of the time we associate hunger with actual thirst. So most of the time we're actually thirsty rather than hungry. But when I first started with the fasting, I'd find myself going to the fridge still and opening the fridge door and looking. It's like, I'm not eating.
Autopilot.
What are you doing? Type of thing. So that, I mean, the first 3 days is the most difficult. Then after that, I think the body's got used to the fact that I'm not eating now. I'm going to start burning fat for energy and whatnot.
What I understand is the body the body knows how to survive, so it goes and looks for broken cells and goes, right, I'm going to turn this into fuel and use this as fuel because you ain't feeding me. I'll find other ways.
That's in the body that doesn't need to be in there. So like
self-healing.
What's it going to attack first? Is it going to start getting rid of toxins and things in the fat cells that get stored in the fat cells, or is it going to start taking things out of the lungs or the heart or things like that? So it's going to go after the rubbish first. It's like a cleanse. Cleaning. But you asked about the cravings and whatnot. It was actually, so I was with my mum for the first few days, in I think it was the first 10 days in Spain, and then my father arrived. And my father likes to drink, and he likes his barbecues and whatnot. And I mean, I probably overdid it. I probably did too much while I was fasting because I didn't stop. I was I think I was out running, exercising, and everything because I felt that energetic. And by the 11th day, I was kind of getting, and I was getting up in the night, and I was getting a little bit dizzy, feeling a bit lightheaded and whatnot. But I had done a lot, and that was another thing that I noticed was sleep. I was I was awake after 4 hours sleep, and I was wide awake, ready for the day. So my body didn't need to sleep as much because it didn't need to repair as much, which was amazing. But then my dad, when he started on the barbecue with the steaks, and I hadn't eaten meat for years, and I've never felt like eating meat since then, since I stopped. But my dad was outside, and like where my balcony is, the barbecue was right below it. So
Thanks, Dad.
I was like, I'm definitely up for some food in the next couple of days. So that's it. But I broke it with some blueberries and some melons and things like that, and which was actually quite hard to eat because I'd gone that long without it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an amazing experience.
And you mentioned sleep there. If you looked into much in regard to sleep yourself,
I know that
generally.
Sleep is good quality sleep, like really good quality sleep is essential for healing and things like that. With I think it's the melatonin and things like that, and blue light from your phone, things like that. I
was listening to a podcast, a Joe Rogan one with a doctor, and he was a sleep specialist. But really interesting podcast about the importance of sleep and REM sleep, and that he talks about a scenario, and it's true. Even if you have a load of drink and you get in at midnight and still get 8 hours sleep, you wake up the next day, you felt like you haven't slept, and that's ultimately because you haven't been in that REM sleep. So you've just been resting, really, not sleeping. But he talked about how it shows how important it is to humans, how important sleep is, because as a species, we if we lived on as cavemen, if we were, sleeps are when we could be attacked. So sleep is the last thing we need ultimately as a human. We should be alert and awake all the time for predators. The fact we need sleep is our body saying that it needs that rest. But over so many millions of years, we still haven't adapted to not need sleep. So that shows how important sleep is to us, even though it's against our nature, because we should be alert and awake for being attacked.
We still need to regenerate. Things like that. And for me, obviously, I was sun gazing as well at the time, which we spoke about before. Obviously, we came on air. Yeah. But which would that help massively, I think.
So talk a bit through that. What that is.
So basically, sun gazing is. You can stare at the sun for the first hour in the morning before the UV ultraviolet spectrum comes in, and also the last hour at night. But what you have to do is you kind of build it up 10 seconds. So your first day 10 seconds, second day 20 seconds, and depending on it, I suppose it doesn't matter whether you do first thing in the morning as the sunrise or last thing at night. I was doing last thing at night in Spain, and the energy I felt from that was amazing. I was staring half an hour at the sun as it was just going down over the mountain, and it's like I mentioned before. Like I was looking at my phone the next morning, it's like everything was kind of in HD. It was really crisp and clear. But I think that really helped with the fasting and with the energy levels and things like that. But there was some other things. So like I was waking up in the night, wide awake. So I'd go to bed at whatever time, and I'd be awake at like 4 a.m. But then there was all kinds of emotions and stuff coming up. Like one morning I woke up and I had tears in my eyes, and I was like having all kinds of things going on. But I just knew it was part of that kind of process of letting some of this stuff go, and these toxins that are stored up in the body. And like I said, the body's intelligent; it knows what to do. So, So,
and what's the speak to anyone, they say stare at the sun, you go blind. So obviously it's something like you say that needs to be built up. What's the benefit or the theory?
There's some stories online where people have actually healed their eyesight by actually sun gazing, and what they say is that you can build it up over a year or a 9-month period, where you build up to where you more or less do the whole hour, and then once you've done that, then you can connect with the earth. So you're connecting with the sun on the last day, and you go barefoot into either the sand or the earth, and can make that connection. And then after that, you basically can recharge and revitalize the body on a different level, because the sun gives life to everything on the planet. Nothing lives without the sun. So, and we're connected to that as much as we are the earth, Mother Earth and the sun. So,
how did you come across that? Because again, it's the first kind of
just on my journey of learning about different things and having the willingness and open-mindedness to try things, as well as not just read about it and think, oh, this might work, it might not, or completely brush it off straight away without saying that's crazy talk. You know, I had an open mindset where I was like, okay, well, you know, someone's told me something, take some information, have the willingness to try it myself, see if it works, and see that if I feel the benefits of it, and that's kind of where I went.
No, definitely, I think it's a great approach to life.
Yeah.
Can I set you on a rant now then?
Yeah, go on. Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's go for a rant. So let's talk about we talk about food and putting food inside yourself, and the sort of Western world we live in, which is food orientated, and then the nature of where a lot of that food's produced from. I presume that sets you angry, maybe.
Not so much angry, but you know, I kind of see through some of the stuff. You know, like I think I mentioned that advertising McDonald's to kids and things like that. You know, that's not something I kind of believe in. The fact that a lot of food's been genetically modified, that you've got food that are filled with all kinds of chemicals, like your microwave meals and things like that. Even using the microwave itself is something I kind of stopped a long time ago. But you can delve into things like amalgam fillings as well, which amalgam fillings are actually called blood poisoning, which is mercury. They can go across the blood-brain barrier and pass on to your next generation, to your siblings. So that was one of the first things when I was on my healing journey that I found out that amalgam fillings, I had to get them out because they were causing me issues, which was obviously...
So you're talking about mouth fillings here?
Mouth fillings,
Okay, sorry, right.
Amalgam mercury fillings that you have in your teeth, so I found out about that. I found out about parasites, and parasites basically thrive in a low oxygenated environment, so they're anaerobic, and they love an environment that has lower levels of oxygen. Now, if you've got amalgam fillings or mercury fillings, then that cuts off oxygen, which gives a breeding ground for parasites in the gut. These parasites want to feed off high sugary foods and starchy foods and things that make the body acidic and cause lack of oxygen in the body. So this is one thing when I had them out, because I was having night sweats and things like that when I was sick, and it was really tough.
So you got some removed, did you?
Yeah, so I got my amalgam fillings removed. You have to do it by an holistic dentist. There's a really great holistic dentist on the island at Folan Health Clinic, Ian Rigby. So yeah, you get them out. You know, they're really not good for your health. But yeah, with the food thing, and you know, like I said, seedless grapes and things like that, they've been genetically modified. It's meant to be grown naturally. If it was grown out in the wild, it'd have seeds. Any fruits that don't have seeds have obviously been tampered with. So it's just like a big minefield, really. And
I think something you mentioned again before we came on, which is there's always a balance to these things. You mentioned about having a pizza here and there. It's not. Yeah, it's you need to be 95% on the, let's say on the, well, I say the good side, obviously, and we would say the good side. Other people might not say it's the good side, but on that healthy, side. The alkaline side.
So, if you just limit the amount of acidity you have in your diet, you know, as much as you can. Juice fasting's good, with the right ingredients. You know, like I said, you think an orange carrot's good for you, when actually it contains sugar and starch, and it's man-made. So, you know, that is a real minefield, the food thing. But I think Dr. Sebi's nutritional guide is a good place to start. It's difficult at first. You know, I'm not going out and saying I'm not telling anybody, you know, to be so. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. They can make their own decisions. It's up to them if they want to drink alcohol. It's up to them if they want to go to McDonald's. It's up to them whatever they want to do. You know, but we can kind of limit some of the bad, you know, then.
And that was very much, you know, this discussion is about, you know, your experiences, and everyone has their own free will.
That's it. Everyone's got their own choice to do whatever they want, and I'm not here, you know, to tell anyone to do anything. But I am setting up my own business, my own company to do natural healing and natural health. Obviously teaching the Wim Hof method, but in the future I'd like to have a natural rehabilitation centre. Because one thing the Wim Hof method is amazing for, and as well as an alkaline diet and inflammation, is healing, accelerated healing. I know of a few people now who've had sports injuries, and especially myself. And basically they have healed themselves. Like one lad recently thought that he'd broken his ankle, rang me up and said, what should I do? Should I go and take some ibuprofen and some medication, all the rest of it? I said, just go and do the breathing, go and do the cold showers. And the next day he was back in the gym. You know, and one of the people who trained me in the Netherlands, Casper, he was training for a marathon, and as he was training for a marathon, he got kicked by a horse, and the horse actually broke his arm in 2 places, I think. Really quite a bad break, and he knew about the Wim Hof method, so he started doing that to kind of get into your pain receptors, which is another thing it does. And then a lady came up. He was driving past and managed to pick him up. Thought he was hyperventilating, so I stopped him. He was like, "No, I know what I'm doing. Just get me to the hospital." So she got him to the hospital, and he carried on doing the breathing. Didn't have any pain medication while he had the surgery and everything. Just carried on doing the breathing. Wow. His arm actually healed itself faster than the doctors could even believe. He got no inflammation, no bruising. He was doing a lot of the Wim Hof method, and obviously while he was having this going on, he couldn't train for the marathon. So he went out and ran the marathon without any real training and ran a personal best. Because the breath work actually simulates high altitude training, so low oxygen level. So doing this breath work, you can actually.
And have you talked about, or have you heard of situations where outside of or professional athletes using it as part of their? Have you heard that?
There's quite a lot. I know there's a few UFC fighters. Diego Sanchez is one of them. I know Alistair Overeem is using the Wim Hof method. Who else is there? Novak Djokovic is using the Wim Hof method, and has done for years, and he's the #1 tennis player. And he also went on a plant-based diet, which is when he kind of separated from the other 3, Federer, Murray, and Nadal. So it's getting out there now. I think people know the benefits.
I was going to say, so how does someone start? Is it recommended they look at the breathing techniques first? The cold, you're not advising anyone to jump in the sea tomorrow morning, but like kind of how do you get into the Wim Hof method?
I run courses. I run fundamentals courses where it's a 4-hour course, food's included as well. We do a plant-based food for the end of it. So we do courses where I basically go into the science, go into a lot of stuff, a bit of stuff that we covered today. But you can get the app for free. You can download that. We've got a breathing bubble on there at the minute. You've got videos on YouTube where you can get it for free. And it's I'm not here about the money for it. It's if you can go out and you can't afford to come to a workshop, go and download the Wim Hof method app. Start doing the breath work, experience that, and if you want to learn more, then come and see me. Just start off with that. I started off with a 10-week course, the original course, which was amazing. And then you got the fundamentals course, which you actually get, I think, a discount on at the minute because of COVID. They're giving away discounts on that. But like I said, you've got videos online on YouTube and things like that you can do for free. And I think the breath work is a really good place to start because, it goes pretty deep, and it can go pretty deep. So,
and we can tell talking to you that it feels like, the sense is very much about, I want to impart. I feel so good about this. I'm desperate to share and for people to experience what I'm experiencing here. That's the impression.
Yeah, that was it. I had such a like I said, it wasn't ever my intention to teach the method, but that's the way it's turned out, and because I've had such a good experience with it.
You kind of want to shake people, don't you? Experience this. It's amazing.
Especially at the time right now. We're going through a supposed respiratory illness, where we're being told to be locked inside, which goes to the opposite of all the science behind grounding. Going out into nature, which has the best antioxidants you're going to get, by going in and connecting with the earth barefoot, going into the sea and things like that, and the rivers. That's going to give you the best healing you're going to get, and we're being told to be locked inside. I know that people in the UK are being forced to wear a mask, mandatory, when I know that breath work can access the immune system, the innate immune system, and when he's getting injected with a bacteria, is fighting off straight away. So that goes against everything that I've kind of known, experienced, and learned. I know that hugging other people, because we're people who need to connect with other people, because we have morphic resonance, and we are just energy if we go to Tesla. And basically when we hug people, we release oxytocin, which is the love chemical, the love hormone in the body, which helps heal. So we're going against everything kind of what makes sense to me right now. And when I was going down during the whole COVID thing, I was going down the beach every day. I was going for a swim in the sea. Someone tried to tell me, because I don't listen to the mainstream news and I don't listen to the press breathing and everything else, and I was there with half naked with my towel over my shoulder, getting ready to go into the ocean, into the sea. It was like March. It was pretty cold, and some woman come driving past it on a mountain bike, and she had a hat on and a mask on and all the rest of it, and she's like shouting something over to me, and I didn't really hear it. I was like, pardon? She's like, the beach is closed. I was like, okay, so I just gave her a nice little smile and a wave, and I just had my towel on my shoulder, and I just carried on to went from a swim, went from a swim, because I know that keeps me strong. I know it keeps my respiratory, cardiovascular system strong, you know. And so that's.
How often do you go into the sea?
I probably go in at least three or four times a week at the minute. I do want to go more. I want to go in every day. But now I have a good group of friends that we go into certain waterfalls every week.
Right.
So we pick a different waterfall. So I've got quite a few group of people now. It's kind of catching on, and you know, people wanting me to go out for a swim with them and on different waterfalls around the island, which is ace because I get to see more of the island now. Whereas like when I first moved here when I was 14, you know, I used to love seeing the ocean, because growing up in Warrington, you don't really, the only time you see the ocean is when you go to Blackpool, and that's not a very nice ocean to look at. It's all brown and, you know, pretty disgusting. So when I first got to the island, I was me and my cousin would go in the water quite a bit, but you know, I never really got to see so much of the island, and so like all the beauty spots of it, you know, like the waterfalls and the glens and things like that. So since getting back from my travelling and doing the Wim Hof method, I'm seeing so much more of the island and seeing so much more beauty in it and everything else. It's amazing.
And the just to go back to people interested in courses you run, etc. Facebook, the best place to track you down?
Yeah, so I'm actually on Facebook as Ian Ianson, in brackets Kirk, and the reason because I was off Facebook for 5 years before I went travelling, as I was just doing all this learning. I was just at home like a hermit learning, so I didn't want to mess around with Facebook and take on everyone else's stuff. So before I was going travelling, actually my father's name's Ian, so and I was looking into quite all the Nordic stuff and how they name the sons and whatnot. Right, okay. So for me it was Ian's son, so Ian, son of Ian. So actually on Facebook I'm Ian Ianson, in brackets Kirk. I also have Inner Alchemy, which is my company I'm starting, and so Inner Alchemy on Facebook, also on Instagram. We also have a website as well, inneralchemy.im.
We'll add them in our show notes as well.
So we advertise all the workshops and whatnot on there. It's
a couple of other things to cover off, if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll keep ploughing on. You mentioned about the gut earlier. Again, bits I've done about the gut, they're saying it's like the second brain in the body. What's your experience with, obviously you mentioned about at the beginning about having health issues at a younger age and gut related.
So
I presume that's quite important. And
debilitating bowel condition that I had is obviously, you know, which was severe, and so it's the fact that I got sick, and obviously it took me to that place where I had to forced me to learn, which I'm grateful for all of that experience now. But there's brain cells in the gut. There's actually brain cells in the gut, and it's connected. The whole human body is one connected thing, you know, and we get a lot of the surgeons and doctors and things like that, they're only trained in dealing with one part of the body, whereas if you look at the human body as a whole, it's a whole organism, you know, we're trying to work in harmony, whereas when you have disharmony, you have dis-ease. You know, so
you apply that when you think about the gut and the importance of the gut, and go back to food and what you put in that gut, and that's, you know, just talking to the brain and
and like the same with the parasites. You know, like, you know, you've got lack of oxygen, you've got your eat. So if you're eating meat, therefore, you know, if you leave a piece of meat on the side in your house for over a week or whatever it is, what's going to happen to the meat? It starts getting worms and maggots and stuff. So when you put it in your body and your core temperature is 37 degrees, where's those parasites going to go? You know, they're going to go into your body and into your gut, and like I said, they're the ones that kind of dictating. So if you've got a craving for a sugary piece of sugary food or something that's acidic, you know what I mean, it's probably because you might have parasites in your gut that want that food. And for me, you know, like, as much as you don't want to, you know, be like, oh no, I've not got these things in my gut. Well, when I was at the Healing Village, and I'd already been on a Dr. Sebi's Village Usha, and I had already been kind of living on a pretty decent diet before I got there. Maybe not as best as I could do, but when I was taking the herbal medicines and fasting, I literally seen 6-inch parasites coming out of me.
Right. All right. Wow.
So and then if you've got them inside your body, it's not good. They're going to be multiplying and breeding, and passing all the crap that comes out of them into you and whatnot. So when you do go on the fasting and the juicing and things like that, really take care of the gut. Green juices, things like kale, hemp seed, root ginger. There's a fulvate minerals that you can get, which are really good.
Right.
I get one called Shilajit, and you can get it's like fulvate minerals from the Himalayas.
Right.
You only need a tiny little amount of it. It's like a resin.
Right.
You can put that in with your smoothies and stuff. Your sea mosses. All that type of stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned sea moss, I think, before we came on air, but that's something Dr. Sebi talks about.
Sea moss. So sea moss actually has, I think, 92 of the 102 minerals that the body needs. But it actually has all of them, but some of them are only trace minerals, and that's fantastic for your diet. And calcium.
Stupid question, that's some form of plant.
Sea moss is actually seaweed.
I was going to ask that exact question. I assume it's sea and it's a moss-related type.
It's actually a seaweed, so it's actually called Irish moss, and then you can actually get it in deep parts of the Irish Sea as well.
Oh, right, okay.
I think the best sources, places like Jamaica and stuff like that have it. But that's fantastic. Dr. Sebi was actually fasting off it, and same was Lisa Left-Eye Lopez when he was healing her.
Okay.
And she I think she did a 42-day fast.
Right.
That's why Pat and Gwendolyn ended up doing it in memory of Lisa.
Oh, right, okay.
And she loved it. I think Dr. Sebi, there's a story where he says that Lisa came in at like 2:00 in the morning. She's like, "I love you, Dr. Sebi," and then she's there with jugs of sea moss in her hand, and she's like, I love this. And she loved it that much. She actually took a family there. There was a video on YouTube. I don't know if it's been censored now or whatnot, but there was a video where she actually took her family members to the village and was showing them around and what it was all about. And that's how much he believed in it and believed in him. So
again, we're switching around because there's just sort of notes to cover off. Yeah. And I go back to I mentioned at the start, I went on the mindful course. Yeah. It was only half an hour of your time, but what we did was, everyone that was there lay on the ground. Yeah. Big inhale. Yeah. Through the kind of 3 gut, chest. I do remember these things, and then head, and then not a small exhale, but a quick exhale, and just
like you're letting go.
Yeah.
So it's deep inhale, and then just letting go, fully in, and letting go. So it's like 40 breaths. Yeah. 30 to 40 breaths like that. So the fully inhale, but what you'll notice is, which we train in the workshop, is most of the time we're breathing into our chest and we're breathing in through the mouth, which I know Wim would say doesn't matter, just get it in through any hole. That's kind of what Wim would say, but which is correct, with his method. But nasal breathing if you can, especially during the day, and we really want to fill up the lower barrel area, really deep into the belly, which then the diaphragm goes down and massages all the organs and things like that. So it's vital that we really get that deep breath in that we don't normally do, and the long inhale, which actually activates the rest part of the nervous system. We were talking about the animalistic, the tendencies, running from a predator. Yeah. See, we've got 2 parts of the nervous system. So you've got the sympathetic and you've got the parasympathetic. Now the sympathetic is like the accelerator on the car, okay? It's the fight or flight, the one that needs you, fight or flight. For running from a predator back in the day. So most of the time you'd be 95% in the parasympathetic, the rest part, because you were just going about your day, getting some fruit or whatever it is you did when you're living in the cave or on the plains. Whereas now, with the way we live and our lifestyle, so we have to get up early, we have to get the kids ready, we have to go, get them ready for school, to drop them off, go to work, come home, leave work, get the kids, Then you sit down after you finally put the kids to bed and sort them out with dinner. You sit down and you put something on TV. It's an action film or whatever it is. Yeah. Keeps you in that sympathetic constantly. So you're constantly in this overdrive, this sympathetic, and this is what kind of made me sick in the first place. Was I was constantly, I was working on my feet all day. In quite an energetic job, 60 hours a week some weeks. Then I was basically playing football, hitting the gym, playing football, sympathetic, constantly. And it's like, you take your car home and you leave it on the drive and you basically just leave it on all night.
Yeah,
and you just carry on running.
Yeah.
And that's what it's like when you're constantly in the sympathetic. Whereas like with the Wim Hof method and that breath hold retention and we're bringing ourselves back into the parasympathetic, the real rest part. And you know, and that's what we need, and that's what helps with sleep quality and things like that. Obviously the cold as well. But when you're in the sympathetic, you know, if you're in fight or flight, what happens to, you know, your digestive system? So not only now, if you're eating meat that might contain parasites and whatnot, and your body needs to digest that. So if you're in fight or flight, do you need your immune system? If you're trying to run from a saber-toothed tiger, what's your immune system? Your digestive system, do you need that? No, so that gets subdued. Also, the whole fear thing in your immune system and whatnot, when you're living in fear, that kind of reduces your immune system. So currently now, at the time with the mainstream media pumping out everything about the cases of COVID and all the rest of it, it's like you're in sympathetic. So you're actually weakening your immune system by constantly focusing on that. You're turning off your digestive system for the fight or flight. Whereas if we really get into that parasympathetic, that's where you're going to get the heat.
And that's what that breathing's bringing you into that space.
So the breathing is bringing you into that space, yeah.
What I find quite interesting, it's more whether it's that important in that process, but after those things at 40 breaths, you don't hold your breath, but you stop breathing. And again, for, you know, doing a bit of swimming or whatever, you know, when you hold your breath, you always intake breath because you feel like you need to fill your lungs up, which after that experience of the course, when you just kind of stop breathing, really, you don't fill yourself full of after you've done that breathing. But after we did for 5 or 10 minutes, the end of the different cycles, you'd stop breathing for 1 minute 40. I remember you were saying 1:30, and then you were saying, don't breathe if you're comfortable. Don't. If you're not, carry on breathing. So probably within that half an hour session, it was 2 minutes of, I wasn't holding a breath, but just not breathing. But if you said to anyone, you pull anyone in off the street and said, hold your breath for 2 minutes, they couldn't. Yeah. So I assume you're flooding your body there with
oxygen.
Yeah,
so
yeah. But not your lungs, it's your body you're flooding. I think that was the thing that occurred to me was, this isn't a lung-related thing. You're
flooding the body with oxygen, but that oxygen that goes into the body can't be basically taken in by the body, because what happens is you need the CO2. So the CO2, which I believe is a byproduct, or we get taught as a byproduct, is not actually a byproduct. We need that to help the oxygen be released by the hemoglobin into the bloodstream. So when you're actually filling the body up with all this oxygen, you're actually causing an oxygen deficit, even though you're maxing out your oxygen levels, because the oxygen can't be used.
Right.
Bit mad to think, because the oxygen can't be used. So then when after doing 30, 40 breaths and we do the retention hold, so what is happening then is the CO2 levels are starting to go back up and the oxygen is starting to come back down, but the oxygen is now being used because the CO2 is going back up. So you're actually pushing your CO2 threshold, and you're actually pushing your oxygen threshold as well. So you're forcing your body to adapt to low levels of oxygen, which is always like high altitude training.
Right, okay.
So you're basically doing high altitude training without going anywhere, just by lying on the ground, you know. So it's it's pretty amazing stuff. And
the other thing, that kind of when we talk about, say, Wim running a marathon or in that cold environment, is that at that moment when you're running, you're not doing breath work, are you? Or
no, I mean,
the breath work's kind of the training to get to that point to be able to run.
Breath work's the training, but if I was running, me personally, and I've read books by Patrick McEwen, The Oxygen Advantage, things like that, and I know the benefits in nasal breathing, so I would use his method for kind of running, and the Bolt score and things that he uses. So nasal breathing if you can. If you're pushing it that much that you need to use your mouth, then slow the pace down a little bit until your body gets used to breathing through the nose. Because most of the time, and I was an habitual mouth breather, and I suffered with asthma as a child.
Gone now, I assume.
Yeah, gone now. But nasal breathing is what we should be breathing. It's our breathing apparatus. This is for eating, this is for breathing. So that's technically what we should be using. So if I was running, I would tend to use the nose and train being able to nasal breathe.
And you meditate? I presume you do a bit of meditation, do you?
Not really, you know. I like years ago when what kind of put me on this journey when I bought the Power of the Subconscious Mind and kind of was looking for an answer. I was meditating then, but I find the breathing and the cold
Yeah.
kind of gets me into that
That's
kind of
you
state.
mentioned about that shortcut earlier, I think. Yeah.
So I get into, once I've done the Wim Hof method breathing, and afterwards I come back down, and I have 10 or 15 minutes after that, and I'm just kind of in it.
Yeah.
And that is kind of, I use that as my meditation. So yeah.
Great. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
It's been
thanks.
absolutely fascinating.
Okay.
I think we could get on to more. Yeah, no,
I
I
hope
think
so.
there's probably more, but
Yeah.
no, we appreciate your time. You can see you're super passionate about it.
Oh, thank you.
I
for
know
having
it's been on my radar for a long while, and I do feel I go back to the start and talking about the fatigue I've got.
Yeah.
Though I've started to feel better the last 4 weeks, even the last few days. Starting to feel pretty heavy, and the focus isn't there all the time.
It will help, and also, the fatigue. This is something I had to deal with myself, because I had to take a break from teaching the method over the Christmas period because I had quite a lot going on in my life. But I also had some kind of stuff going on that I put down to stress. But like I said, you should always listen to your body, and this is something I had a bit of cognitive dissonance to beforehand. But then when the whole COVID thing kicked off, something I kind of delved into looking into, which is I kind of limit myself from now. And some of the issues I had first was I was getting really fatigued. I was having heart palpitations. I was having some chest pain. I had a cyst growing in my right eye. And I was having with the chest pains and the heart palpitations. I was managed to just keep it off with the Wim Hof method and sometimes cold showers 3 times a day. But it wasn't until later on in March time that I kind of figured out what it was. And it was being surrounded by electromagnetic frequencies.
Right.
Which that can really have an issue. And I know, like with the cyst that I had grown in my eye, the doctor got me straight away because I had laser eye surgery in the past.
Right.
Before I knew about sun gazing. So I went in for kind of a checkup, and they noticed because I every time I was blinking, I was having this issue in my right eye, and they spotted this cyst growing. And we've put some measures in place. I managed to, when I went back, it was kind of reducing, so that was good. The doctor said that no, that's fine. It's actually getting smaller now. But there was one point where I stood up, and I was living in a block of flats in Douglas, a middle floor flat, and one day I stood up and my eyesight went completely, and I was just like, I can't see. And I was saying to my friend, my girlfriend, I was like, I can't see. What is this? And it just felt really weird. I was having really bad brain fog. I was having trouble stringing sentences together. It was like really, I kept forgetting what I was talking about and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this isn't right. And instead of listening to my body, I put it down to stress. But then when I started delving into the electromagnetic frequency stuff, I was like, okay, this makes sense. And when I started to limit myself from those, my symptoms just went away.
They're coming from what different areas? I assume
like,
phone's one.
Phone is one.
2 phones.
I noticed. yeah. Well, that's it. So I have a business phone as well, but now I always kind of never have them on my person. I used to sleep with my phone next to my bed at night and things like that, next to my head, and then testing that. You got Bluetooth house phones that you might have next to your bed, which I tested. They were actually giving off more than a turned on microwave.
Right. Wow.
Next to your bed and things like that, which I noticed. Your routers. So I put some things in place where I've got some stones. There's certain stones and crystals that you can get to kind of block out EMFs.
Right.
There's also put my phone on play mode most of the time now. I don't have it on my body. And when I am in an environment where the electromagnetics are quite high, I can feel my eyes start to irritate me a little bit. So I'm like, okay. But
and do you think that, like, if you asked a man on the street, they'd maybe roll their eyes, but do you think that's because you're now so in tune with, because of this journey, because you've learned about your body and what's going on, that's well, whether you're right or wrong is a matter for, but that's your view of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know my body now from everything I've been doing, and it's like, if something's not right, like I listen to it, I listen to an experience, and now I'm grateful for that. I mean, I actually had a panic attack in December on my dad's birthday, and it was like my head was all over the place. I actually wrote sorry Dad, but I actually wrote my dad his birthday card and in a Christmas card. Oh right. And my head was that up my ass that I didn't even notice until Christmas Day, and my dad was like, "What do you think of that birthday card?" And I was like, "I don't know when it says Christmas." So yeah, that's the way my head was at the time, and I really, I beat myself up about it because I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't understand it, and obviously I had cognitive dissonance to the other thing, and didn't really look into that. I did a little bit before I went traveling, but then, you know, I kind of passed it off. And then the more I like Dr. Sebi's theory, you know, Dr. Sebi would say, I don't lend myself to philosophy and I don't lend myself to theory, either I know or I don't know. So for me, I was like, well, okay, could this be possible? I didn't believe it at first, but, you know, I'm going to go out and buy the meters. I'm going to test it for myself.
Right.
And this is how then I started finding out that, like, I just bought a brand new laptop to start doing some Zoom calls during lockdown. And I was living in a motorhome and I had a dongle, I had 2 phones. And I was like, oh my God, no wonder I'm feeling like a bit down. So I was like, right, I kind of
put your crystal jacket on.
Yeah, so I kind of put that on hold until, you know, I actually felt better myself, and then once the chest pain went and the palpitations went, and then, like, obviously the other issues, the brain fog cleared up pretty much straight away, and it was amazing how quick the body was can go back to feeling normal again. You know, for me that was, and obviously I wasn't living in Douglas, I wasn't in a block of flats surrounded by Wi-Fi and all the new telecommunications towers that are being put up everywhere. You know, and that's another thing that kind of doesn't make sense to me, is that, you know, during a time of a so-called pandemic and a respiratory issue, we're cutting down real trees that give off oxygen, and we're putting up electric ones, you know, that cause all kinds of apoptosis and cell death and all kinds of other issues, you know, and the fact that people kind of see that as a conspiracy or something else is like, you know, you've got to look into it. You've got to look at both sides of the story. For me, you know, I didn't believe in it at first, but now, after getting sick, it gave me that kick up the arse once again that I needed to say, listen, you've got to learn about something else. And if you're willing to listen.
And do you feel there's a certain, again, from maybe other powers to suppress that information and knowledge?
Yeah, I personally believe so. I believe so. You know, if the system was set up for everyone to be well, then
why is everyone sick?
Why is everyone sick? And Dr. Sebi's been healing, you know, all kinds of ailments, was healing all kinds of ailments since 1985, and, you know, that should have been all over the world and all over the media and all over everywhere, but it's not. You know, and I think they make massive amounts of money off people being in that middle ground of not being healthy but not being too sick where you're going to die, and then, you know, I think they make a lot of money, and if you're healed, you're not going to be a customer for life anymore. And that goes with, like, things I've seen, antidepressants used on a family member for my whole life, and it's not made them any better. And
in your darker times, were you on them? Did you get to that far?
No, because I always said, you know, cause my family member who has been suffering always said to me, one day you'll be suffering, we might be suffering this. It's kind of in the family, which is something that I don't believe in. You know? And I always said, no, my mindset's too strong for that. You know, that's never going to be me. You know, and luckily I've stuck to that, and even though it got to my darkest points, it's never something I was going to try, because I've seen what it does, and I've seen how addicted it is, and I've seen other, like, close friends who've used them for a short period of time. They've been like, no way, I can't use them.
I was speaking to the doctor recently, and he was asking me again. I was talking to him about fatigue and questions they ask about depression, and they asked me if depression ran in my family. Which would kind of intimate that can be an hereditary issue. I assume, obviously, your view of that is not. Again, I appreciate you're not a doctor either, and I'm not a doctor, but these are just people.
I can't tell anybody not to take any medication.
100%.
That's what I'm here for. But, you know, for me, like, it runs in my family, you know, and at the end of the day, even when I was depressed, and, you know, I was not depressed. I wouldn't even call it depressed. I was just done in. I'd had enough, you know, and I was like, you know, I knew I wasn't depressed, but it was just I was going through a dark patch, and I never, it's meant to run in my family, but from books like Dr. Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief. If you've not read that, I highly advise reading that, and that talks about how we made to believe that we are kind of victims of our genes, and, you know, we're going to pass on these things, and he basically says it's not true, and he's got the science and the biology that backs it up as well. So it's like it's an amazing read, The Biology of Belief. And so I don't believe that, and I think we take on our parents' eating habits. You know, who trains us what to eat. So, you know, we take
Dr. Gregor. Don't even listen to any of his stuff. He just talks about healthy eating generally, and the biggest sort of 6 killers in the Western world are basically food-related killers, whether it be heart disease, etc., etc. And he talks about his belief as well is that a lot of the diseases aren't hereditary. they're hereditary because naturally you're brought up by your parents, so you follow their habits. And again, it's back to that habit, isn't it?
Yeah,
You've got that habit, and therefore you
that's
stick
it.
to that habit.
The environment you're in between the ages of 1 and 6,
Yeah,
as the
yeah.
Jesuit priest would say,
Yeah.
show me give me the boy between the ages of 1 and 6, and I shall show you the man, because that's where you get your programming
Yeah.
of who you're going to be when you're older, and that's the foundations that you get to live the rest of your life by. But yeah, it's we're taking all that, and some of it could be trauma as well. Trauma from
Yeah,
the
yeah.
birthing process, for example. There's a great book called When the Impossible Happens by Stanislav Grof. He's a guy who invented holotropic breathing,
Okay.
which is like a trauma release breathing, and it's some people have gone back to the birthing process.
Right.
Where they actually took on the anxiety from the mother.
All
So
right.
the mother was
Okay.
actually feeling anxious about the birthing process and giving birth the
I
first
think
time.
I'll be honest. I think I'd have trauma if I had to think about my birth and being there with my mother.
But there you go, and like some of these people have gone back to that via the birth, via the breathing,
Yeah,
and
right.
they've gone back to those moments, and they've figured out that okay, that's kind of what it was from, and then
Yeah.
let it go. Then and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
could even stem from that, and that's how far back it can go.
Right.
But what do we do in our westernized world to kind of deal with that? We just apply somebody off with tablets.
Yeah,
Are you getting to the root cause of the problem?
Yeah.
And this is the way I kind of see health is like, if you've got a car, okay, for example, if you've got a car and you put, say it's a petrol engine, you put diesel in it, what's going to happen to you?
Yeah.
It's going to break down, isn't it? Yeah. So if you're putting the wrong fuel into your
Yeah,
body,
yeah,
your
yeah.
body's going to break down, okay, and in all types of ways, whether it be psychological, mental, or physical. But say your service light comes up on your car, comes up and tells you your car needs a service, it needs an oil change, it needs, so our body comes up with an issue, right? You've got a pain somewhere, or you've got something going on in your head.
Yeah.
What do you need to do? You need to go and have that change, that oil change, that cleaning, that cleansing, or fastener, or whatever it is. But if you take the car to the garage and you just tell the mechanic to take the service light out instead of doing the service, like you take a tablet for your body to knock off the receptor that's giving you the pain, that's saying, listen, you're doing something wrong. So then you drive away, and what's going to happen to your car?
You're fixing the effect, not the cause, aren't you?
There you go. You're not getting to the root cause of the problem. You're not dealing with the issue. You know what I mean? And I know a lot of people, it takes a lot of dark stuff potentially to go into, but it's something that's got to be done, and then it takes some very it's hard to stop eating dairy, it's hard to stop eating meat, because you crave some of that stuff, but once you go through that and past that craving stage, you start to feel better.
You always kind of feel maybe people are more aware of the effects that change in habits easier. But because often it's small and accumulative. There's not an appreciation.
Yeah, and another thing, Dr. Sebi would say, and there's another doctor who's come out recently, and he's kind of backed up everything he's been saying. And what I've kind of been saying for a while is, Dr. Sebi would say that a germ, virus, and bacteria develops inside the human body, not without, and it can't be caught from the air. So therefore, if you understand that, you then take ownership back of your own health, and you put the responsibility back in your own hands. So Dr. Sebi would say that, like if you take a patient and you lie him in a bed for a month, okay, when you've been lying that patient in a bed and you lift them up, what's going to be underneath on where there's no oxygen? Bed sores, right? So those bed sores, you'll find in those bed sores is little worms, parasites that come out of the bed sore. And why? Because the parasites thrive in a non-oxygenated environment. So where they're going to go to? They're going to go to the place where the bed sore is, and where you lay down and it's not getting the oxygen. Now Dr. Andrew Kaufman, he's also come out recently and said exactly the same thing. So when we look at it in that angle, we can actually, and we're not putting the blame on others.
It's interesting that comment about ownership, and it comes across in other, in all aspects of life, taking ownership of whatever's going on in your life.
Yeah, you take ownership. You're not blaming it on anybody else. Oh, you give me a cold because you coughed on me last week. Oh, or you've been sick. So and that's something I put to the test myself. When I used to get sick all the time. I used to get chest infections. I used to constantly, if I got the flu or a common cold, I'd have it for like 2 weeks. It just wouldn't ever shift. But I was eating 6 meals a day, and I was, having a lot of acidic food, which I didn't realise at the time. But so I actually would go into, when I found out about this with Dr. Sebi, and my diet was was on point. You know, I'd go into a room of a house full of people who were sick. You know, the whole family was sick, and they'd be like, "Oh, don't come in, you're gonna catch it." It's like, you don't catch it like that. And I'd sit there, and I wouldn't get sick. I've not been sick. I've not even had a sniffle since. And I've sat in plenty of rooms with plenty of people who've been sick and whatnot. And So,
all right. Well, thanks again for coming in. It's appreciated.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Sorry, we went
pleasure.
on a little bit.
No, not at all.
So,
I'm sure we could go on a lot longer.
Yeah.
So thanks for your time, Ian.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk openly.
No, it's a pleasure. And we'll
it's-
in the footnotes as well. We'll add some links to where people can find you. And I
Thanks.
suspect I'll be on one of your courses in due course.
Thanks.
No pun intended.
Yeah, of course.
Do you want to check us out, Matt?
Yep. So wherever you're listening to us today, please like, share, subscribe, and leave those 5-star reviews, pretty please. On social media, Facebook, we're the M-Word Podcast, Twitter, Max Sports Pod, and on Instagram, we are the M-Word IOM. Still remember it.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And it's word out from Martin.
And word out from Matt.
Thank you.